Hey everybody, happy, what is this, Tuesday. Glad to be back in the EC office. I was just in Miami for the weekend. It was so nice, but so much work. We have our internship fair tonight, so I think there's some folks on the call who are participating. If you have any last second needs for that, shoot me a Slack message so we can make sure you're all set up for 4 p.m. In the meantime, I'm so excited to have Emily back with Yelp. So they did a workshop for us in December. Happy to share that YouTube link out if you would like to watch it about reopening in 2020, what you need to know to communicate. And now she's back to talk about reputation management, which is huge. I feel like an ever-growing topic in kind of the time where we're all on our phones, always looking at those reviews, writing those reviews. Anyways, thank you so much for joining everyone on this call. Thank you, Emily, for being here. And I'm going to hand things over to you.
Awesome. It looks like you might just need to allow me to share my screen, and then I should be off and running to the races. And for the rest of you, oh, you're fine. You're fine. For the rest of you, if you were at my first presentation, it's great to see you again. And if this is your first time with me, never fear. I have a few slides to cover some of the stuff we went into a little more detailed when we talked about Yelp 101. So today's presentation is going to be predominantly about reviews. And I'm going to talk a lot about the tools and features on Yelp, but I'll also give you tips, advice, and options to use on other platforms as well. So we'll cover quite a bit of ground today. My role at Yelp is to educate on the free tools available. So in a pre-pandemic world, I would be at conferences, trade shows, conventions, talking about Yelp's free tools and trying to help business owners better understand not only the resources on our site, but the way you can leverage social media, the way you can integrate things into your website. So really everything digital and reputation management focused. I've been working for Yelp since 2014, and so I always give out my email and let people know if you have a question that I can't get to today, or you have a more personalized issue that you want to talk about one-to-one, shoot me a note. I'll see if I can support you directly, or I'll connect you with the right person at the company to help you out. So if you need my email after the fact, Haley can give it to any of you guys. She'll also have these slides and presentation recorded, so you can access it that way as well. So don't feel like you need to jot everything down. You'll certainly have these resources after the fact. Let me give you just a quick high-level agenda of where we're going to go today. We'll start by talking a little bit about consumer behavior and just better understanding what your end customers are doing online. Then I'm going to give just a 5-slide overview of how to set up your free Yelp page. We did more of a deep dive on that last time, but I wanted to at least have a few tips for you guys who haven't maybe set up or leveraged all those free tools. Then we'll spend a big chunk talking about reviews. I'm going to give some local examples, and we're going to talk about the different scenarios you might run into. And then I have about 4 to 5 slides to close out, just talking specifically about COVID operations, how to communicate that on Yelp, and the importance of information that you might want to share on other virtual platforms. So every time I do a reputation management presentation, I talk about this concept of wanting to achieve a great reputation and then having the ability to go out and do that. And a lot of it is mindset and mentality. A lot of it is understanding that one negative review isn't going to overshadow all these other reviews. And in fact, it's an opportunity for you to step into a conversation and reflect who you are as a business. So we'll dive a little deeper into that. But first, I want to talk about the importance behind these reviews and why spending time and energy here, whether it's yourself or someone on your team who you delegate this task to, will in turn get you some results. And so I always take it back to the days before there were review sites. Think a little bit in your brain about how you might have gotten yourself in front of other potential clients. Maybe one of your first options was the yellow pages. Maybe you had done TV ads. Maybe you still do some TV ads. Maybe radio was a big channel for you. We talk about billboards, direct mailers, stuff like that. But essentially, word of mouth was probably your biggest resource. And that's essentially what reviews are, word of mouth online. And instead of me just telling my colleagues or my family members when I have a great experience, I can share that now across a multitude of platforms. And I think the thing that's really important to take away here is we're not just talking about how much people read Yelp reviews. Yes, Yelp is one of the most popular platforms in almost every vertical to find review content, but as consumers, which we all are, whether we're business owners and entrepreneurs or not, we're still consumers, we read and consume reviews in so many formats. I always tell the story about when I ran the Chicago Marathon a few years ago. I spent a lot of time reading reviews for long distance running socks on Amazon, time I will never get back in my life, even though I already kind of knew what brand I wanted to go for. Having access to information and opinions of other people is just something that we as consumers have become accustomed to. So whether it's getting new recipe ideas, checking out movies that are coming out, or seeing the overview of a driver you're about to have before you hop in a vehicle. Remember that when we used to order Ubers all the time? It's been a really long time since I ordered an Uber. But essentially what we're trying to get to the bottom of here is that consumers use this information to determine where they're going to spend their money. 97% of them say they read them, and 85% trust reviews as much as a personal recommendation. So this is just kind of showing the landscape that we're in today's environment compared to even 5, 10, or 15 years ago. I'm going to highlight a couple of local examples today and go over some of their approaches and strategies when it comes to responding to reviews. I absolutely love Goodwood, Nashville. Dave is just such a great guy. And he's one of those self-admitted people who has a good digital presence and online reputation, but it's not something that just comes naturally to him. When he opened this business, it was all about creating customer service and providing that personalized touch in helping people access some of these older wood items or even creating custom products. And so he had to get himself used to doing that digital engagement as opposed to just customer engagement. So how could he take the way he talked to people when they were in his brick and mortar and translate that to online? And back in the days of, early 2015, 2016, 2017, we'll see how Dave was already responding to reviews and using that response strategy as a way to create connection with his customers, but also reflect who he is as a business to all potential consumers who might land on his page. We're also going to talk about Mignon Francois of the Cupcake Collection. She has some great digital engagement. She actually has a team member that handles a majority of that for her. So we'll talk about the value there and the decision-making process of who's going to actually handle reviews. But we also have some really unique stories from Cupcake Collection where they've turned some experiences around. So I'll dig deeper there as well. But I like to give you guys names so that you can go and take a look in your area and see what other people are doing. I think another really valuable thing to do is whether it's related to reviews or just how your other, I'll call them competitors, but really just other businesses in your area, how are they leveraging social media? How are they leveraging review sites, whether it's Yelp, Google, TripAdvisor? Taking a look at that stuff to get inspiration isn't cheating. It's just taking a look at the landscape. And I think you'd be surprised to see how many people have started to adapt to this response strategy. And that means consumers are going to start to expect it, which is why we want to get you prepared. As I said, I cannot really do a presentation without giving these very brief overview slides of free tools. I know some of you might have been with me last month, so I'll keep it super brief. But for those of you who haven't claimed your account yet or added your business to Yelp, both of those things are free to do. And a vast majority of what you can do on Yelp to communicate and promote your business is free as well. So to get logged in, you go to business.yelp.com. Once you're in that account, you're going to see all of your basic business information as it's currently listed on the front of your page. You're going to want to go in and modify, make sure it's accurate. The biggest element here is categories. You can be in up to 3 categories on Yelp. And this is part of your reputation management, right? Reviews are a big part of it, but at the basis, Yelp And other review sites that you might be fond of or use a lot are listing sites. So oftentimes people are coming to these pages to check your hours, to click through to your website, to see what certain offerings you have during COVID. So remember that and make sure it's accurate. But in categories, make sure that you are listed appropriately. And then if you are in a service-based category, fill out the exact services that you provide under that category. That'll help you prevent from being an option for services you don't provide, and will help put you in front of more of those customers who are your true end user. Filling out your specialties history and meet the owner is really important, because while yes, your online reviews are going to influence where you appear and how much you show up, so are these sections of your account, and they're free to complete. So you have an opportunity here to essentially review yourself without a star rating, right? What would you tell someone about your business? What are the most important elements of the services you provide or the offerings that you have for your customers? Use these keywords and phrases to help you appear in search. Photos are also really important, you guys. A lot of Yelp users, they might look at overall star rating or quantity of reviews, but more often than not, they're going to be visually looking for cues about a business more than they're going to be reading a handful of reviews. So you have the opportunity to upload unlimited photos, and having photos that show not only your brick and mortar if you have one, but maybe yourself and your staff. Maybe you have a lot of vehicles if you're a service provider. What do those vehicles look like? What can I expect when I hire you? All of this, as well as responding to reviews, can be managed in the palm of your hand with that Yelp for Business Owners app. It's free as well, and I highly recommend it because a lot of you probably aren't sitting at laptops or desktops very often, whereas you might be more easily accessible to respond to a review, change your hours if something pops up COVID related or holiday related. Having access to that on your mobile device is going to be so much easier for you to make those modifications. All right, let's deep dive into reviews now. And I always, when I talk about reviews, need to start by busting a few myths. A lot of business owners in my years have told me they don't engage with online reviews, or they don't spend time and energy there because it's just a place for people to be negative. It's just a place for people to complain. On Yelp, that's just not true. Nearly 80% of our reviews are positive, and we have more 5-star reviews than 1, 2, and 3 combined. So while yes, I completely understand that negative reviews hurt and they're impactful, especially when it is your business, they're an opportunity for you to join the conversation and reflect who you are. And I also want to point out that negative reviews in certain amounts can also build extreme buying confidence. And there's been a ton of studies done on this. Harvard Business School did a study 2 years ago that really effectively showed 3.5, 4, 4.5 star businesses performing far better than 5 in many industries. Because again, it's about the overall image they're getting about this business. It's not just about one review, be it positive or negative. So things that you can do to impact your online reputation are things like completing your profile and responding to reviews, which we'll get to in a minute. But I always need us to get over this emotional barrier again, right? And the emotional barrier is the difference between how you handle customers in person and how you embrace online feedback. I know a ton of business owners who have pillars in their business that are all about customer service, all about how they handle issues, but they don't carry that customer service and those same approaches over to online review sites. Long before I was at Yelp, I worked in the restaurant industry as well as hotels. I was a front office manager of a Marriott for a few years, and reviews were about 40% of my job, not only responding to them, managing them, but implementing feedback from them, whether it was to my staff or the other departments of the hotel who were receiving feedback. And I needed to always remind my colleagues that even if it was frustrating that a user flew to a keyboard and shared this negative feedback, if they had brought it to the front desk, we would handle it professionally, courteously, and immediately. And we need to reflect that same approach digitally. And the first way to do that is to acknowledge that reviews are valuable, okay? And I'm not saying that every negative review is something you're gonna take something away for. I'm not saying that you're gonna implement a change in your business for every piece of negative feedback you get, but reviews can help you identify trends, negative or positive. I know a lot of business owners who use online reviews as positive reinforcement for what they do, just as much as they do to identify negative things that they might not have expected. And I think the key important factor here is negative reviews are oftentimes just about a missed expectation. So there's a lot of ways that you can engage and turn that around. And this statistic here is so important in what our main takeaway today is. 89% of consumers read a business owner's response to a review. Now, why is that important? It's important because consumers are looking at negative reviews through the lens of, this is one consumer's experience. How did the business owner respond? How did the business owner approach this situation? So you have an opportunity to reflect who you are, and that's why your public response is not about the reviewer. It's about every other potential customer who's looking at your online reputation, whether it's Yelp, Google, Facebook, TripAdvisor, doesn't matter. They're looking not only to see what that customer said, but what did you say? What did your business say in response to that feedback? You can come back and look at these stats if you want, but the key summary here is the psychology for consumers when they see a business owner responding is to be more inclined to share. So businesses that respond to reviews have a higher star rating on our site on average. They also have a higher quantity of reviews. It makes a lot of sense, you guys. If I'm a consumer and I know that you pay attention to reviews, whether they're Yelp reviews, Google reviews, doesn't matter, I'm more inclined to share my positive experience because I know it influences how you do business. Does that make sense? All right. I always love to toss other people who have the great advice that we're sharing your way. I personally love to read. I know a lot of my business owners better themselves by reading, and this is a great book, especially if you're dealing with customer service. Jay Baer's big constant takeaway in this book is answer every complaint in every channel every time. And it's hard to do, but it's as simple as setting up some key strategies, one of which being turning on Google alerts, for example. You should all have Google alerts for your business. They're free to set up. And that way you can see when people are saying things about you, maybe on platforms or sites that you're not as familiar with. One great example would be Nextdoor. A lot of people use Nextdoor and a lot of business owners leverage Nextdoor as a way to get in front of their local neighborhood community. If you have Google alerts turned on, you can see when someone's talking about you on a platform like Nextdoor. All right, let's get into the actual tactics that I'm talking about here and break it down to the different types of reviews you might encounter. While critical are going to be far less frequent than positive, it's what you're most worried about, right? So have a strategy in place for this so that when it happens, you don't have to go through the whole emotional process of how are we going to handle this. It's just a moving forward, one foot in front of the other at that point, okay? There's two options on Yelp, and a lot of other platforms have these same options as well. Public comment or direct message. The way you want to think about this is public comment is going to be displayed on your Yelp page right below the reviewer. Direct message functions like an email. They're going to get a notification and they're going to see your message when they log into their Yelp account. That's a good way to talk one-to-one about what might have happened or to figure out solutions. Public comments are for you to reflect your customer service practices to all other potential consumers. So start by thanking them for leaving a review. Maybe address or identify something they mentioned in their review, but then take that conversation offline. So the public comment is really almost like more of a checkbox. We've acknowledged this customer. We care about feedback. We're going to solve this with our client one-to-one. Now, The other use case for direct message as a better method is if you don't have time to write these customized messages. You don't want to look canned on the front of your account. So make sure that you have a few seconds to at least type 1 or 2 personalized response patterns in that message. Oh, let's see if we can still see this. This was a screenshot for you guys, and I actually can probably just pull up the Yelp page. It's for the Cupcake Collection, and it's important to show you guys because this actually happens more often than you might think, and I was so excited to see that Mignon's staff had one of these experiences. So here we are, Crystal J of Cleveland. She writes a review here, this first paragraph being negative. My husband and I drove 3 hours, we arrived, they were already out of most of their cupcakes, and I had ordered something that they didn't have set aside for us. So this first review was not 5-star. Crystal was frustrated, she had a negative experience. And to be honest, they had driven really far to get to Cupcake Collection. Many of you guys probably know of Cupcake Collection. They happen to have a little bit of a cult following. So it's not that abnormal for someone to travel to visit them or to be in town and have them on their list as a destination they want to visit. But what I love here is we see an update that is not only reflective of what happened with this incredible customer service and how this resolution has come to pass, as well as just a deeper connection between Crystal and Cupcake Collection. But I wanted to point out here that Tonisha took the opportunity to not only resolve this offline, a lot of that dialogue happened offline, but also to do this public response and to make some statements about their business that are informative and educational for anyone who might be reading this. So while now this updated review and 5-star rating goes to the overall, you would be surprised how many times we see reviews updated in the same format or in the official process on Yelp where they can display the negative, update to positive, and then only that positive star rating is displayed on their page overall. The other really crucial thing I wanted to talk about here is how Tonisha is the one answering these reviews on behalf of the business. Tonisha is Mignon's right hand. She's basically her, secretary. She kind of takes care of all things, whether it's, managing the different interviews that Mignon does, or, working on some back of the house marketing, strategy type stuff. And then she also manages the online reputation. So she's taking that time to respond. I think it's crucial that if you personally either don't have the time or it really is overwhelming, whether it's anxiety provoking or you just don't, it takes you a lot of time, you have a mental roadblock to it, get someone to be a part of this process. And also, you can, to an extent, templatize some of this and then have someone help you, whether that's one of your kids, a niece, a nephew, an intern. There are a lot of options to have someone take this element of it off your plate, as long as you in your business have a strategy for what that response is going to look like. Let's go to positive reviews now. Positive reviews are really crucial here for 2 reasons. One, you can use your public comment to add more color, keywords, and explanations of what you do. Those will all help you appear in search. But again, if we're landing on the side of not having a lot of time to customize, then sending those direct message thank yous can be really, really valuable. And the reason that we do that, again, is we don't want to look super canned. So if you're a restaurant, a retailer, a home service provider, and you're dealing with high volumes of reviews, we actually have an automated button in your account. Looks like a handshake. You can click it to send automatic thank yous when people write positive reviews. But I will say, it is worth a few seconds or minutes time to deepen a relationship with a customer who's reviewed you, because you know they're already in this category of clientele who's ready, willing, and excited to share their experience with your business. Here are some more examples again for local individuals and the strategies that they're using. On the left, we have an example of Dave. He responds to all of his positive reviews publicly. He actually customizes them, but again, there's nothing crazy here. This is 4 sentences total. That couldn't have taken him more than a minute, minute and a half max. And something that's important to note here is there was a little bit of time difference here between Britt and Dave's response. When you're looking at critical, for example, I really do think there's value in immediacy. I think a 24-hour response and turnaround time is something to strive for. 72 hours is maybe realistic if you're not in your business or working on your business every day. But this option on the left is just showing us that there is still value in responding, whether it's publicly or directly, because this creates a connection again with Britt. And in Dave's case, this is a connection he wants to deepen because she might come back for more pieces. On the right here, I needed to show this example because we have another Cupcake Collection review, positive this time, and it's a family who was from out of town, visiting Nashville from Chicago, and they had a great experience. They uploaded a cute photo. They wanted to share what happened. They loved this place. Tonisha thanked them for their review feedback, and she pointed out that they they offer nationwide shipping. So not only is she deepening her connection with Christina, saying, if you want to taste us while you're back home in Chicago, order online, but she's also letting anyone else who's rolling around on their Yelp page to see that information. She has that indicated in a few places, but why not take a second to mention it again? It's a really effective way to use those keywords, because now if someone is looking for nationwide shipping for cupcakes, this content is going to help Cupcake Collection be a good result for those searches. The last section here when it comes to how to leverage your reviews effectively is just amplifying that positivity. So there's a lot that we want to do, whether it's taking reviews from any platform and sharing them on social, but also sharing them on your website, embedding them into other places where you have a digital presence. And so the real value here is taking your connected audience. So let's use Instagram as an example. You have followers and customers that are engaged with you on Instagram. In many cases, they've probably already had some touch point with your business. And when they see you sharing a review from a customer on a certain platform, they now affiliate and associate you with paying attention to feedback on that platform. So they're more likely to share their experience as well. The last point I want to make about reviews here is specific to Yelp. You really need to be careful on our platform about asking for reviews. And what I mean when I say be careful is don't do it. So on Yelp, we have a review recommendation software. Some of you might be familiar with it. It's an automated algorithm. It works to recommend the most reliable and trustworthy content. So it looks at a ton of things: what we know about the reviewer, how active they've been on the site, how many reviews they've written, the content of the review itself. Did they add photos? Did they check in? A lot of stuff. But it's also working against reviews that have been solicited or asked for. And let me give you some examples. I used to work with a guy in LA who owned a bunch of car washes. He had iPads in his business that customers could fill out reviews while they were waiting for their vehicle after they paid their bill. To our algorithm, those reviews all looked like they were coming from the same device. There's no way that the algorithm can tell a difference between Bob sitting in his office and writing himself reviews or customers coming through a business and using the same device. So you just want to avoid tactics like that where you're asking for reviews specifically on our platform. Another great example would be, don't send mass email newsletters asking specifically for Yelp reviews. Now, I'm going to say one other thing on this topic. Other platforms do not take this firm of a stance, okay? It's against FTC federal regulations to pay people for reviews. That's bar none, blanket everywhere. On Yelp, our stance on solicitation is unique to us. That's something that we're pretty vocal about, and I can certainly give you more information offline if you want to know the why behind that. But whenever I tell you guys this, I tell it to you so you're not working against the algorithm. So you're not spending time trying to garner reviews that are going to frustrate you in being not recommended. Now, other sites, in particular, let's say you're a real estate agent and you're working on Zillow. They not only tell you to ask for reviews, they give you resources to do that. So feel free to do that on sites that allow it, but know that Yelp takes a really strong stance and you're going to be frustrated in working against it because it's an algorithm and it's automated, okay? Here's another great example of ways that you can share your reviews and engage that content naturally. This is Cupcake Collection's website. They have a little toolbar where they have lots of reviews, and they're for all different platforms. So they're not even trying to push you to a certain one, be that Yelp or Google. They're showing you where they're present everywhere. And they have the toolbar on their website that links through to all of their social platforms, as well as Yelp and their Google page. So that's something to keep in mind as well, as a way to let people know where you pay attention. All right, I'm going to use these last 5-ish minutes before I open it up for Q&A to talk about communication during COVID, because again, I think this is a really crucial part of your reputation management and that digital reputation. We know that in the past 10 months, man, it's crazy that it's been 10 months of this, but there are information pieces that are far more important to consumers than used to be, right? And so as COVID was happening, we were creating all of these features and tools for you to communicate that information. And now we're at a point where I not only want to show you what those resources on Yelp are, but I want you to leverage them to spread that message across all platforms. So this is what I call my COVID message. It's a clear, concise, and consistent statement across all my platforms that talk about operations. Am I open? Is it different than what my consumer is used to? What am I offering? What safety precautions am I taking? Do I have virtual? And how can I begin my transaction in supporting your business? Now, it's important, you guys, to note, and I think you're all good at this by now. I mean, man, we had to move all over the place the past year, but the thing about this is when you have that clear, concise, and consistent message and something like regulations for Nashville occupancy change, you got to make that quick pivot in your messaging and spread it across all your platforms, right? So what I want you to do when you take away from this presentation is remember, you can log into your free Yelp account and add these offerings, but get a little sticky note or a notepad next to you and jot down what these message items are and then spread them on those main platforms. I would say you probably want to shoot for 4 or 5. You probably have your website, Yelp, Google, and then maybe you have some social, whether it's, Instagram or Facebook, or if you heavily use LinkedIn. Think about those areas where this message can be repetitively updated when big changes happen. This COVID banner on Yelp is very similar to when we used to have holiday banners. The biggest difference is holiday banners on Yelp used to say, hey, consumer, it's a holiday. Make sure that this business information and operating hours are correct. Now, the COVID banner is completely modifiable and customizable to each business page. So I tell my business owners, if you have a COVID message, put it here, but really just put your most important operating information here. So if you're a real estate agent and you're open for virtual consultations as well as in-person house showings, maybe that's the information we have in our COVID banner. If you're a retailer and you're open certain days of the week and you offer curbside, maybe that's what we're putting in our COVID banner. But this is essentially a prominent block where you can put your most important information. Virtual offerings, and I have to talk about this not just on Yelp, but on a lot of platforms for two reasons. One, we still have so many consumers who are only comfortable with virtual. So we want to remember that as a business, right? Maybe we had all these virtual offerings when COVID first happened, but a vast majority of our customers are comfortable with in-person as long as we do masks and social distancing and all of that. If you're still open, available, or offering virtual, you want to have that checked and indicated on Yelp, because when those consumers search for virtual, you will appear if you have that selected, but you won't even show up as an option if you don't. So let's say you're doing, maybe you're a tax preparer or a CPA, and you've been seeing some of your clients in person, but you would be willing to do Zoom tax preparation. Put that virtual is still something you offer, because I truly think it's going to be a while before all of our consumer base feels comfortable with that. And if you are available, you want to have that offering, because it's just one more potential bucket of revenue, right? One more potential opportunity to get a client or a customer. Health and safety measures. These are really important because we saw a lot of consumers searching for this particular information. So we put it prominently at the top of Yelp pages now. And I tell people, when you update this and you're making these notes, get a little bit of juice flowing in your brain about how you can communicate safety measures on other platforms. Okay, if I'm checking that masks are required, or if I'm checking that there's social distancing in my restaurant, how can I tell that story on Instagram? Can I take a picture of curbside pickup where my employee is masked and my guest is masked and we're handing things off? Can I do an image of the sticky items that I have in my brick and mortar to show social distancing in the cash register line? So as you're filling out this information on Yelp and on Google and on other listing sites, think of and take note of how you can communicate that same very important message on your website, on your social media, on other platforms. This is what a Yelp page looks like nowadays. It's pretty crazy, you guys. I mean, reviews are like, under all of this information. You can, of course, see the star rating at the top, but you see how that COVID banner is right there? I mean, that is the place to really tell people what you're offering. And then you have the health and safety, which is what's boxed in the red there. And it just converts that customer so much faster, because so many of them are turning to Yelp or Google just to get this information. Maybe they're already a customer of yours and they just want to know, hey, are they open for me to pop in and do some shopping, or do I have to order online? Okay, I'm going to toss it to questions in just 1 minute, but I always have to shout out the Yelp blog these days, because in the last 16 months, we have doubled down on the business section. We've hired entire staff to write articles that are not just about Yelp. They're about getting business loans. They're about putting together marketing strategies where Yelp is just a fraction of it. And we have some expert advice writers as well, which has been really, really fun. So check out the blog if you're looking for those kind of resources. We really pride ourselves on vetting and finding the right experts to highlight some of these topics that matter to you guys. And then the last thing I wanted to point out before I open it up for questions, can I just say how proud of I am that there's 20 minutes left for questions? That was like spot on. But we have this new podcast that we launched in partnership with Entrepreneur back in November. They're 15 to 20 minute episodes. They're hosted by me, and they're kind of like an NPR style. So I tell a little story and you hear sound bites from a reviewer as well as the business owner that they reviewed. And this Thursday's episode, our first episode for Black History Month, features Mignon Francois, who is the owner of Cupcake Collection, both in Nashville, and she has a location in New Orleans. I almost forgot. But if you want to listen to any of those episodes, we've covered a ton of industries already, and they're really just a fun 15, 20-minute way to kind of get inspired about things that you can do in your business to influence these incredible experiences people have. Just open that camera feature on your phone and hold it over to that QR code. It'll take you to whatever platform you normally listen to podcasts. And this Thursday, if you subscribe on there, you'll get the alert for Mignon's episode, which talks all about her Nashville location. I'm going to throw my email up there for a few minutes while I run questions. And I saw that some people were typing in the chat. So let me just put my eyes on this quickly while I see, but look who's back. Haley's back to help me as well.
Yeah, I can read some to you. So, and also if anyone wants to unmute themselves and kind of add more context. I'm struggling today. Kevin was asking, his business is 100% e-commerce, and he's wondering if there's an e-commerce category which is not tied specifically to a zip code.
It's a really good question. Here's the best way I can describe it. You do not need a brick and mortar to be on Yelp. However, fully e-commerce Yelp might not be a fit for you. So let's break it into two different types. If I operate a business out of my home and I let people order jams and pies and those sorts of things on my website, and then I deliver them or sell them locally, then a Yelp page makes sense for me. I would just put a city and a zip code. I don't need a physical address. Now, if I make jewelry in my home and I ship and sell it all across North America, like on Etsy and stuff, then Yelp probably won't be the best fit for me because every search on Yelp is location indicated. So you could have a page, but it would really only help you be found in your nearby geo. So I hope that helps. Truly e-commerce normally kind of falls off because they would want that visibility nationally. But I want to make that clear distinction that you don't have to have a brick and mortar or you don't have to share a physical address to have a page. It could also be like a service provider and you don't share your business or warehouse address on the front of your page. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Cool. Of course.
Awesome. And the next one is from Annie. I don't know if Annie, you want to unmute yourself, but she essentially just wanted to dive deeper into responding to these bad reviews, long versus short, pointing out, what they did wrong versus only addressing experience shortcomings, asking them to change the rating versus not. There's kind of three different questions, if not dozens in that. I know it's a tough topic.
It's a really good question, Annie. I can definitely go deeper on that. So two things. One, I think the public comment in response to a negative review should be pretty short, concise, and a little bit more on the professional side. You're not necessarily going to get into a back and forth dialogue with the reviewer in that public comment format. So if you want to think of it as like a systematic approach every time, I always start by thanking them, even though in your head you're probably like, oh, I hate you. The thanking is crucial because it kind of opens that message with your tone. Thank them for the feedback. Maybe address one of the items that they hit on. So in the example we gave where Mignon's assistant responded, she hit on their overarching theme and goal of always having variety for people. So while that was where they missed the mark, she was trying to show that that is a part of their normal culture and wasn't a true reflection of how they do business. And then she took that conversation offline. So whether you close out by saying, I've sent you a direct message, I look forward to chatting with you further, or you give them a way to get in touch with you by providing, a generic email that comes to the business or a phone number maybe they can reach you at. Both of those are great ways to illustrate that you talk to or are open to talking to that customer further. But that public response is more of a strategy, if you will, to show your practices and how quickly you respond, that you care about feedback, etc. Now, asking them to change the rating, that's a really good question too. And my stance on that is really, for the most part, not to do that. And the biggest reason is because in many ways, you want to show that you appreciate the feedback, but that the star rating isn't really the important thing to you. It's about hearing them out, resolving their experience, etc. Now, of course, we hope that they change their review. And a lot of business owners I work with say that it's about a 50 to 60% of the time that happens. But in asking them, sometimes you can turn them off even more and make them feel like you weren't really caring about their experience or trying to resolve their experience. You just care about your star rating online. Does that make sense? It's a little bit tricky. Now, hey, I mean, if you're having a long dialogue with this person about resolution and they say something to the extent of like, thank you so much for taking the time to take care of this. Let me know if there's anything I could do. You could always say, we would love if you could express how we resolve this issue. And I just wouldn't ask them to update your review. I would just wait for them to kind of prompt that conversation, but trust that you have about a 50-50 shot that they're going to update that review themselves.
And then David asked if there was kind of a central location to monitor all these different rating sites. I've definitely heard it's interesting, like Yelp is always like #1 go-to, but there are several different sites out there.
Totally. And so I think the question here, David, is all about volume. So there are a lot of aggregate companies that you could sign up for where you can kind of plug in your accounts and see all of your reviews in one place. An example of platforms like that would be Sprinkler. Now, I will say Yelp in particular, especially because our strong stance against asking for reviews doesn't work with some platforms, because there are some reputation management platforms that actually actively try to get you review content. And so we don't allow those sites to pull aggregate Yelp data into them. But like I said, sites like Sprinkler are approved and you can see everything all in one spot. I'll be completely transparent with you. I think paying for those services requires you to be at a certain volume where the management is really worth the fee. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of ways, if you're just a one location, for example, to get yourself set up so that you can have everything being funneled through your email inbox. You could even create like an email specifically for the review stuff to go to. And I think there's often an opportunity to have someone in a support role at your company, or someone that you know who's easier or faster with digital, if that's a little bit of a barrier for you, to gather that aggregate data. So I guess I won't go too much deeper, but if you want to ask me one-to-one questions or get some more info about particular sites, please shoot me a note. All that to say, like, there are options to pay for it. I think you just have to decide for yourself if that management fee is worth it, or if you have an alternate way to use and leverage the free resources.
What other questions are there? I want to allow people to just unmute themselves and ask if they'd like.
And it could be about anything. I mean, it doesn't just have to be about Yelp.
Yeah, Emily's an expert
have
in
good
many
examples
things.
for other things. Yeah. Totally.
She's been around the block very obviously. She knows what's up. What other questions are there? Anything?
Are you guys doing, I feel like if you're in this group, you're pretty like, tapped into networking and stuff. One thing that I've seen a lot of as we go into 2021 is just like local collaborations, whether it's, promoting certain offerings or specials if you have certain things coming up around the holidays. If you guys have any questions about that or, stuff in that realm, let me know. I think that's a hot topic lately. What industries are you guys all in? What's the majority of people on the line doing work-wise?
We have a lot of different stuff. I'm not sure if they'll speak. I have a soap company. I have a kayaking company. I have a nonprofit. I have a tech company on here. What else do we have? I have a software developer.
David, just so you know, for nonprofit, that's a huge category for us. Not necessarily one that gets a ton of review volume, but in terms of setting up your free page and describing the nonprofit efforts that you have, it can have really good SEO value for you. Same with any B2B businesses on the line. Like a great example would be my dad owns a payroll company. And so his customers are businesses and he's not getting like tons of reviews or anything, but we spent about 30, 45 minutes setting up his page, just making sure the offerings and the information was accurate. And now when people hear about him, or, you know, they think that he might be an option for them and they Google his name, they see all that information consistent from his website to his Yelp page, etc.
Awesome. Any questions, folks?
Well, you guys know where to find me
Emily.
if you need
Yeah.
me.
All right, we'll wrap up then. Well, looks like people still found a lot of value and we had some good questions. Again, thank you so much, Emily. You seriously are like such a wealth of resource. It is awesome. And thanks everyone who joined the call. And I'll share kind of Emily's email out and the link to this recording later.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Everyone.
Bye, you guys.